Little species biases, value system. I forgot to check this before I even got on if it was in tune. Excuse me. So this is about. I want to tell you guys about a little bit about rap guys and friends. Anyway, a little about rap guy and friends are anti-hyper archetypal criminal criminal enterprise called Romulans. They began as an anti-archetypal criminal enterprise called the Black Pupils, but it went awry. Now this is a way to teach about what more probably and more practically what Romulus and Remus were about and where and how such could not be afforded. For example, relative to answers slash S short and protracted from the revelations with that. For example, with those who are countless amounts of us who want to speak about and understand and observe and allow observation of honestly all that is connected to where and to how the black pupils and the whites of eyes, how this natural communications with nature's is trying to use our syntax nature, our functioning for. See, these are all systems tactical ulterior from the one that we were supposed to get the Constitution unabridged to be. But this preaching method knew that it could make the phenomenon of modern nations individually grouped and together as locations, areas, and states, as the phenomenon of a certain type of victim slash hyper victim that not only forgot ancient sciences and the observation of all that comes from the observation use of scientifically the identity of the hyper simultaneous, which is a distinct identity of simultaneous. For example, as an individual is a distinct identity of simultaneous as volume than the species body is, invisible but still discernible, and or that groups are areas, ages, sexes, all that which the ancients contemplated before the scientists became criminally foreign influenced. It was in demonstration. All exceptions that appeared to be in demonstration only, they realized in demonstration the same thing. In other words, this is about the invisible but still discernible, slash hyper invisible but still discernible. And the value of how there are five distinct identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature that were bound that way three ways as one and simultaneously five ways from our perspective as only an extent that we have complete possession of to know. See, since some ancient times, other words were replaced and were self-valued by victims slash hyper victims who are employed for those reactions, non-reactions, or selves and voices, sensed and worse than just heard and attached to fake words anyway, and or to, entertained premises treatments, quality of fact treatments, fact treatment nature qualities, aspects, nature treatments. For example, so an ancient hyper archetypal criminal enterprise is more probably and more practically what is to blame, where and how summaries and summary convictions, formal, informal, by people, everyone we're speaking about the identity the sciences share, not just the law, not just physics, not just language, the identities of the sounds have individually grouped and together. That identity that has, just like everyone's identity has the different identities of each person's body, the different organs, the different systems. When they are positive onto their different selves, their different ways, they're positive to the complete identity. I'm not a doctor, not a police form, not a criminal, not a judge, not a politician. I'm not a criminal insidious in this nature. And see, that's why they attach me and others who try to follow the course of the revelations connected to how that that the course of black peoples and the whites of eyes that is taught by nature. It comes also with nature's course that is further positive or negative to itself. There are proofs that lethal hadith is force-based nature transfer per science. It is Earth's a special difference relative to where and to how the hypersimultaneous has it actually unfolded and is still unfolding. And we know to an extent will continue to unfold. It is how it is one identity, the same way a cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall are manifest. They are in demonstration of how there are, for example, 3 distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. Granted, it's hard to discern the difference between a cell nucleus and a cell wall in physics. And with electronics and digital, it's they're teaching the same thing, cell nucleus, cell or atom nucleus. I'm not sure. Cell nucleus and electrons, but on a valence shell, which would be like the cell wall, I assume. And I have to put a link to videos for that. But so, in other words, the point is, this is about the electrical engineering. This is about the identity the sciences share. Each of the stewards of each of the identities of the sciences individually grouped and together. Forgiveness, for example. There are proofs that forgiveness is relative to us needing to discern through all the juxtaposed distinct identities of criminal insidiousness, even as the same types like wrongdoers. And not just if they're different overt criminal enterprises, private ones originally still not charged, and worse. And so roles complicating more and more at all locations that hypercrime scene that American history was really about. And so this video for YouTubers, we could do. In other words, we have to act for the species volume, knowing it's abridged. We know that our countries, all types of jobs that are supposed to be the identity of the country, here and there, individually grouped and together. They have so many reasons they can't talk about things, and they're talking anyway. They're speaking anyway because of this method since the youngest ages. Thank God, nature's going to demonstrate those colonial systems themselves. But negative value nature progressions acts natures. Any system that entertains those crazy laws, with witch trials, let alone slaveries, even if they made the witch trials up. And the applications of those things never went away. And the people that are still pretending that's debatable, that are increasingly self-valuing means and needs to get away with it, that are inherited per this method that knew it showed, it maintains remote possession of the countries individually grouped in together relative to their opinions and their convictions regarding if or if not, or the value of it. The course of black pupils and whites of eyes is abridged. And the suburbs, since before our founders were born, since before our founding parents were even born, the suburbs were designed by that already entrenched North America and South America with slavery, that our founders had to hide roles countering and had to hide it. I hide out roles countering because it was sickly and distinctly entrenched North and South specifically for that. Specifically where and how it's a method that already sustained, measured, perfectly undiscerned its motivations for such evil, sustained against the colonists that were a part of it, and everyone spilling onto the Native Americans, sustained it against them. And everyone's identity was employed to uses, self-valued of those words that were made to replace those hyper-native pure. And then the native pure still, we have to have the native pure unabridged to be able to remember the hyper-native pure or be able to sense it not here. And so imagine how the cities of the world unfolded. When we have countries that could go to outer space, but they have prevented. So we make a YouTube video. The presidents, no matter who's president at the time, all their dreams agree. See Chief too. Chief and president are two incompatible volumes, but one way. And discern how the cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall, and then the cell walls get thicker where they touch each other if you observe a tomato cell in a microscope, because tomato cells are easy to discern because it's mostly transparent. The chloroplast is manifest distinctly as the cell wall. It is manifest distinctly as the cell body. It is manifest distinctly as that manifest in the cell body, which can be discerned as and we're taught to describe as the cell nucleus with physics, with physical biology in cells. So with electronics, they're using the nucleus too, but they're doing it for what we can't observe, like we can with physics. But everything is in demonstration of how physics, metaphysics, and identity are bound simultaneously too. Just like all the parts of our body have a semi-nature relationship to our complete identity. And whenever they are positive to themselves, they are positive to the complete identity. Whenever we are truly positive to ourselves or others, not as criminal insidiousness nature is a positive, no. Part of the reason forgiveness is so important because this breaching method tactically denatured the earth below everyone's feet and the systems beyond everyone's control and sustained that. And sustained uses of the effects of it with no one fathoming how it was using that, how identity works and how it is being exploited, including hyper-additionally where and how we are the voicings of the ground. And they, us. We are the voicings of the other species, they, us. But relative to what's going to really cause positive value, nature, progressions, acts. It means out of nowhere, or negative value, nature, progressions, acts in natures. Acts like predicate acts. Natures like wrongdoers, wrongdoing itself. These are organized crime terms. These are terms associated with war crimes. But we have the hyper war crime. Obviously, war crimes as conceived were and are incapable of speaking for that which has the black pupils and the whites of eyes. Our course abridged and everyone forced to entertain other. Whole bunch of people who pretend to be, integrity is relying upon experts. The sciences are being and haven't been, they're abridged. And that's hyper additional. Everyone came through this because they blamed other things, others themselves. And they left out how that really came to be. George Washington didn't want anything with slaves. All exceptions, exception nature that appeared to be in demonstration of other are fronts against, and worse, screening against the why and how the Constitution was to be gotten unabridged. They're screening why and how we had to leave slavery entrenched in North and South America, while there were North and South colonies, where and how the founders had to counter extort the other colonists to help us, leaving their formal bodies with slavery. The Institute of Living on the campus of Harvard Hospital was instituted in 1822, and with slavery associated in the North and in the South, against everyone, against our founding parents sickly distinctly, against everyone sickly distinctly, to keep out sickly non-distinctly from being discerned. They had overt uses of color involved with it, because this is the plan to be able to have everyone be able to sense, who's not going in collusion with the breaching method, because everyone was in trouble individually grouped or together if they spoke up about things. If they didn't speak up about it in internationally monitored, in databases connected conversations, with the colonization. That's why I learned it at Central Connecticut State University. At the same time, intercampuses and intra-campuses, again, there is a remote possession of criminally foreign influenced uses of the positive treatments, of the negative treatments, of the time treatments, and of the not worse than hearsay. So therefore, every time everyone uses hearsay, formally and informally, interbrains. There's that complete remote possession of people with all natures of corruption. So, for example, in other words, we could, if the whole country is on the same plan, and we're working to have the sensibility for the whole species, knowing that the countries with the nuclear weapons, even when they have to shoot guns at each other, there's something wrong, because that's simultaneously when they're on the suburbs tactically denatured, let alone what's the value of what's in cities and what they call good education or bad education, and how they got away with so long focusing on the resources, measuring that, and as tools for their own motivation, but as tools everyone measured, maintained by the breaching method for its own. But everyone else is self-cultivated, measuring for their own. Everyone still doesn't discern what is recorded that everyone would discern. So we have to address with forgiveness, because who to blame and what to blame is a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. Syntactically, we have to go greater than war crimes. For example, as recorded proofs, all the different truths about what led up to the wars, like World War One and World War Two. They're used to screen, leaving out the significance of the other finite groups and overall details. You have to be led by what is true always, not denying the slightest exception to to be to be evolution science. And you have to sense it doesn't feel like games. It doesn't feel like evolution. So we have the opposite. People want fear because or they want that fake insidious criminal insidious natures of theater. Oh, this person's good, and they say all only heard because they don't have the principles. They want to talk about principles that way with physical delusions simultaneously with criminally foreign influence, fact-cheaping nature, quality aspects in nature. Everyone, because everyone came through these scams, or they attach us to fake words, fake locations. This is really why everyone has impositions of, like where people from their age groups, I wouldn't even want to call them peers because they're it's an identity theft, fraud, slander method that is against everyone sickly distinctly. It is simultaneously overtly / insidiously that against our founders and recorded its self-value. See, this is where everyone attacks each other back and forth and only heard blame, and everyone left out how they were hiding in the live progressions. The YouTubers' plan is to make a video /S and, drop off pantheism, which is better than a charity. This is how we can use, we use phrases like artistic reparations, and we switch the colors, noting that there is no white country and there is no black country. There is no single voice. See, they don't want anyone to deal with the finite ages, areas, sexes. For example, alpha and omega are relative to what is constant, to what is variable. But what is variable has the constant and constantly increasing value of Earth's special difference and of the difference of its identity of relationship to itself at the same time, because that goes with our means to discern that which is hyper invisible but still discernible. For example, which word is the subject, which word is the predicate as the main verb. We're dealing with the invisible but still discernible. This comes with an extent of the hyper invisible but still discernible. And prayer was more probably and more practically having been revealed as a scientific value where, for example, it takes contemplation of an individual to make sure to use the order of the finite, not the smallest finite detail left out. See, this is a method that knew that it could use all the sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, quote, sense and sensibilities, unquote. Reportedly a phrase used by Jane Austen, which I keep forgetting to. I've been looking for years. I wanted to read Jane Austen for this. Because I know No one spoke about, no one countered properly the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature. It's a predicate acts delivery system method itself. It is a simultaneously hyper predicate acts delivery system method. It is simultaneously a hyper criminal insidiousness delivery system method, while being criminal insidiousness nature's delivery system method regular too. We could even discern this. For example, excuse me, I should have done this before I started the video. Thank you, Snark. Snark is. Excuse me. So, presidents could, a whole bunch of companies would land and people would land. If presidents signed an executive order, they wouldn't be scared. You know, they're going to get sued or whatever like that. And they would help out. Because we have to address how sickly, non distinctly everyone, simultaneously, we have to address how sickly, non distinctly everyone is victim. And simultaneously, how relative to the breaching method, that is also fact nature oriented. See, we have offensively had prevented at all locations, you know, just like, thank God, any system that's going to have slavery and those things is going to have nature itself demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, natures. The loss of its guidance towards the what's going to really cause positive value nature progressions, acts, natures. No, I forgot the other thing I was going to say. Thank God about. In other words, thank God though. No, everyone wants to help. This is not what I was going to say, but everyone wants to help, and everyone will help this way, and we could help each other. You know, even we have the only way we could afford or do it successfully. Get the soil back where the worms have enough to live, enough to have. There were way more worms. There are hardly any now. And you know, it can't be just here. How many years after the suburbs the grass goes away? It's all fake nature, let alone the cities. All exceptions, exception nature. You know, people speak about wealth and they never bring up the exception of how America had to begin with no wealth. You know, America had to begin with that breaching method still entrenched and still active possession /s ranges of possessions over what over everyone because itself was ranges of possessions that even entertained, you know, it couldn't defend itself and even fathom how it is actually being exploited at all locations, areas, and states. everywhere the species body of volume is, how simple it is. It's why and how, for example, is that simple, how simple it is to discern that the suburbs are criminally foreign influence denatured, needing to be healed, needing injunctive reliefs, let alone New York City with its people stacking, let alone where people make opinions about things like wealth. So there's different natures of wealth. And oh, these ones say, thank God, the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, killers, even a serial killer, even the people with the witness protection program, even former director of the FBI, and a whole bunch of other countries. They are recorded how kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, final act, and with insidiousness of people A through Z. The sense and sensibilities, use Jane Austen's phrase, of people. Now this has to stay the subject. No, I'm not saying anyone's bad. I'm saying this is part where everyone's separating us from speaking with others by jumping in our conversations, by attaching us to fake conversations. They're doing this against each age of fact, achieving nature, sickly, distinctly, as collusions with what? Employed. Negative value nature progressions, acts, and dangers, sustained, no, since before our founders were born. And so uses of that employed everyone blaming the real causes of it, which it knew it was the breaching method, blamed on other things, others ourselves. And that was simultaneously increasing while it was being self-defended. Quality of fact, human nature that can no longer be defended is defended. So with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and roles, the identities at locations. They've been planting, standing at play. Investigations and investigators have been used remotely since they were little kids. For example, the different parts of Central Connecticut State University has roles with the Morrow family's intercities, involved with people on off the state judicial branch offices, on off the town offices, on off the state prison offices, locations next to it, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, various natures of drugs and medicines crimes, and with other people with foreign and domestic medical families, uses of, identity theft, fraud, slander roles. There's a reason people don't speak about this without using other people's names, because if you try to do that, they sense it. They sensed it. I figured out what it was. They sensed it, and they they have to hide what unfolded because they already had roles with all kinds of cases, legal cases. They lied about the real outcomes in legal cases, attached people to fake conversations with themselves, the news media. Then they pretend it's personal. That's relative to where and how they say people call everyone else bad. They have roles with various natures of federal crimes, even child offenders. But before they were caught, and since kept needing to hide their they were involved with this torture method where they're kept needing to blame the real cause of themselves needing to lies to other people on other things, forcing them to. The real reason why they help each other and like each other in certain contexts and hurt each other in other contexts. And these are names in themselves that they brought up, switching names too with the interbranch leaders. This is because this is relative to where and to how they've been used remotely, every country individually grouped in together since founding. And that's also relative to where they have roles and natures of relationships and uses of campuses, intercities, campuses of all ages and natures, and their roles with narratives and demonstrations of off-campuses, locations, intercities, like relevant to the training of police forms, including the military, foreign and domestic, involved with the switching names with the interbranch, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. Part of their world trade for example, has to do with psychology, psychiatry. Their roles of giving people mental diagnosis, making stuff up to do it, creating medical conditions in people. They have all kinds of scams with the lawyers at the hospitals, and at Hartford Hospital, for example, and with their wire and mail crimes, fake conversations with people, and crimes with their patients and criminals in my area before they got caught. They outrun it and try to hide what they were caught doing. And so they make fake things. Now these are people even with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and people from Washington, D.C. associated with him, and his lawyer in Hartford, Connecticut, Robert Cheverie, in locations next to him. Involved with a whole bunch of people tied to John Maiano and people with Weathersfield Pizza involved, which is right near the state judicial branch offices. Roles with people associated with that and with the Weathersfield police who wire crimes, forging and switching names on police reports, fabricating police reports, and then not providing writing. And they do tricky ways. If you try to respond to one without mentioning the other, and then that involves also to where group they did this. They have the switching names used by the police forms one way, some ways, and then they have it other ways they do it to groups. And they all hide each other's, and they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes that are left to leave out exceptions in the value of what came first. So then they say, well, why didn't you say anything? It is recorded how they keep victims. No, in other words, the overt criminal enterprises, killers, people next to the body dumping spot, the investigators themselves, they had already been used remotely, even if those things were made up too, even if the witch trials are made up. There are uses of them through time relevant, and there are delusions wrought still, relevant to denying the significance, simultaneously how the ground is tactically denatured below everyone's feet non-distinctly and sickly distinctly. So they have not let the people, and they force that to be sickly non-distinctly because of color. That is while simultaneously for their own insidious needs and natures, measuring and maintaining, it blamed on other things, others themselves, because it had nothing to do with color. It had to do with a method of measuring and maintaining who's going to know the whites of I, the cores of things, as that possessed by that which, but it can only lead us as the identity that can only be the identity of the hyper-simultaneous. It is distinct from a group as a distinct identity of a simultaneous nature, made up of a whole bunch of individual simultaneous natures, bodies of the body. Of the extent we have control over, no. We don't have control over the species body, but one way. And it's not through these economic narratives and postures that are still in collusion with whole predicate acts methods between campuses with connections made for themselves. And now to discern this, it takes humanity needing to use the names of people that are involved with the influences. In other words, differentially, increasingly, perfectly. It fit people A through Z. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the branch of the government, individually grouped together, all private tied to them. Further out from those locations, kept in time needing to hide fact-cheating nature-oriented predicate acts. Lies and illusions, real motivations, relative to the differentially criminally foreign influence where no one wants to be. But it's relative to where and how everyone's been used remotely as qualities of fact-cheating nature, as criminal insidiousness, or they attach you to fake words, fake locations, fake ties to other, fake natures of ties to other, forcing you to use other people's names relative to where and how. Courts, they prevent people short words because they've been planting evidences. They've been using truths for lies, and with physical delusions. So they've been preventing writing at the same time. Criminally foreign influence, fact cheaping nature influences, and physical delusions at the same time. As people that want to pretend that they're attaching people to fake behavior for correct reasons. You can't have people out of line in court, but for correct reasons too. There are people that could have stopped killings and child abuses if you just let people. They're telling people to shut up because they're leaving out the significance of exceptions, the exceptions because they've been painting fake exceptions of people knowing each other. They is demonstrably, most probably that's what they're doing, taking pictures of people next to each other. Then they'll say, "Oh, they know them." These are agencies. There are CIA families, FBI families involved with the Wethersfield police families playing these games because they've already been using Facebook in various cases and their Facebook pages interbranch with child sex offenders, further roles with the upskirt nature pictures on Twitter too, and with the people involved with this Joshua Julian, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved in my area with names who confessed him years ago involved. I don't know him. I only know him through others. So you know how to make people remember others' names too when they're playing these games. Now these are various natures of courts and their family members involved with names that are involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, a whole bunch of foreign and domestic doctors. And these are all instances and things that they brought up when they fabricated emails with WTNH. They've attached me to fake conversations with people from WFSB and Roger Suzanne and other investigators of theirs. They have the name. So they have all kinds of police forms involved with on Covington Street and with the other sides of names involved with the other sides of Central Connecticut State University in New Britain that are involved with fact cheaping nature oriented. He said, she said on my street, and names that are involved with wire crimes on my street and on and off the Wethersfield Police Department, involved with falsified police reports with their patients and criminals themselves before they were caught, and since and during that to force it too before it was caught. The principal child abuser. There are two Mendez police and a Bob Chase recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Bob Chase with a forensics location, also relative to people who were making confessions about and pretending other. In other words, Joshua Julian's involved with identity thefts and frauds, also with a police chief Cintron, and 1 years ago connected to the same house / Esther he's criminally involved with, and his roles on the Facebook page of the principal upskirt nature. More people with upskirts on and off that campus and on and off shopping centers. There's a shopping center in Rocky Hill associated with a Rod Rodrigue, and people all along Maple Street involved with various natures of courts like New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts have roles with the FBI and with military police and their families and their intimate ties on and off Central Connecticut State University, also with deans and their kids, principals and their kids, coaches, where they hang out social and stuff like that. They involve people like that when they're switching names, forging names, because they are all little punks. They use that crime method of pretending people are saying things bad about the police, changing their words. They've been using this since founding, pounding drums. Their definitions of their defenses of their identities are in our way. That's because that was used in many prayer. And they have some sick people with the prisons in Connecticut, including Newtown, Sandy Hook, is recorded involved, and forensics locations further involved through time with the same with crimes with their patients and criminals before they got caught. People associated with the criminally foreign influence uses of the witness protection program, the relative body dumping spots, confessions as of Fianza family on and off the state judicial branch houses and locations next to it, all along Route 3. Something be places on and off Elm Street involved with them, and places next to Fox Connecticut News and WFSB involved with them, with mayors too and their kids involved also, and politicians, everyone speaking to other people, putting fake things in databases with their little fake plots that are also relative to where and to how they confess. They're differentially criminally foreign influence, and they're going to pretend other. That's what they communicate from the youngest ages, and then they make connections even between the kids. It's recorded. So we have to get the names of the former people interbranch that brought these people's names up, because they have some sick fake punk games in the background, pretend they had legitimate sources, pretend they had legitimate motives. So make sure they get onto paper, because this goes back through time. Excuse me, most people aren't supposed to do that with it,